Hello, this is Nige. The reason you probably joined our Bible study, pastornige@gmail.com. So, being the fact that we've had some rather strange weather, being the fact that we've now got 7 people involved, and those that have not been able to make it, you know who you are. I'm sending this just so you know what you're missing or not. Okay. So today we're going to be looking at Isaiah 4. I chose Isaiah 4 because it is a short group of verses, and I'll just give you an example of what's going on. So with that, having said that, I've misplaced my glasses, so eventually we're going to have to go with the official Braille book. Here we go. Anyway, never mind, here we go. And in that day 7 women shall take hold of one man, saying, We will eat our own food, and wear our own apparel, and let us be called by your name. Okay, 7 women shall take hold of one man. Now I know there's some things that say that numbers mean something. Well, I'm not gonna address that because that's a rabbit trail going off down the road here. But what I wanted to address is the fact that the men, glasses, there we go, after all that. What I'm going to address is the fact that the men, because up till, let's see, chapters 1, 2, 3, we're talking about war and rumors of war. And so now we have, we're down to 1 man to every 7 women. There's probably a pretty good chance, too, that the man is already married. So this would be sister-in-laws and things like that that have got a hold of their sister's husband and said, please let us be married to you, and that's in parentheses. What was going on is the men that fell by the sword in war, and a lot of times the women were threatened or put in as a punishment or used as a slave, and basically used for, shall we say, loose morals and that kind of thing. Basically, they were used as prostitutes. Some of them, took it on as a way of supporting themselves. They started dressing excessively provocative, self-ornamentation with nose rings, earrings, everything hanging from everything, and started talking in a rather loose form of conversation. And here we have the effects on the slaughter of the menfolk in the city due to war. So basically what they're saying is there'll be scarcely 1 man in 7 left alive. That's without the wounded, those that died from infections, and death through other forms. Basically, we did not have antibiotics and things in those days, so it was pretty gruesome. Also, we have to take into account there were deaths involved in the bringing of life into this world. Childbirth these days is rather a mundane thing. It's, people go in and have a baby and they come out and they go home with the baby and everything is okay. But in the times that we're talking about, we didn't know what we know now about childbirth. So there was a lot of women that were dying too due to the bringing forth of children. So here we're talking about multitudes of men being killed by the sword, other men dying through the wounds of the war, through the wars, and then we have also women that are dying through childbirth. But in all, we are still down to the fact there are now 7 women to 1 man. That then cuts into the fact that the women were led to be prostitutes to support themselves. So then they go to a family member, and when I say family, I don't mean incest. I mean the fact that they would approach their brother-in-law. So they were not related, but they would go to their sister's husband and say, "Do you mind? Can you say that you are married to us? We'll take care of ourselves, we will clothe ourselves, we will feed ourselves, but we just need your name to show that our moral standards are correct." That's all right. It sounds good to me. So, verse 2.
I have a question.
Oh, you have a question? Okay, go ahead.
I mean, you hear throughout the Bible regarding numbers and significance of numbers. And correct me if I'm wrong. Number 1 is divinity, correct? Oneness.
Yeah.
Number 7 being perfection.
Correct.
My question is, what was the significance in those numbers that Isaiah is referring to? It looks like war has made women victims. They're victims of the war due to the fact they had to take on choices that demoralized them as such. So in knowing that, what is the significance in that number 7 being perfection or completion, and the number 1?
Well, it's I've done a little study on this, and I really think in this particular case that we're trying to show the amount of loss of the working men, because they were all slain by the sword. When you look at 7 to 1 ratio, that's an awful lot of death. I don't know. Even the Second World War wasn't that high. So the total, what we're looking at is total decimation of the male existence within the city of Jerusalem.
And you have to repopulate.
Yeah, and now the women are basically responsible for repopulating the whole city with men, which they will not be eligible really to take over care of their elders, i.e. their mothers, because we have that hierarchy thing in history where the mother is taken care of by the son or the son-in-law through their old age. We still have that today in a lot of communities and a lot of families where the son or the son-in-law is taking care of his mother or his mother-in-law. They live in the house, they eat the same food, they commune together. But here, in this particular era in time, that was the way folks could be secure in their old age. There was no social security, there was no pension, there was no ability for a woman to really earn any kind of money, because she was subservient to the man in that aspect. Okay, let's see. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Pastor Bill.
Just wanted to kind of make sure we got that point clear.
Yes, thank you, Pastor.
Okay, number 2. In that day, the branch of the Lord shall be beautiful and glorious, and the fruit of the earth shall be excellent and appealing for those of Israel who have escaped. Okay, now remember the remnant back here, we're told that God will keep a remnant of his chosen basically to live on and to keep families growing. So we're talking about here for those of Israel who have escaped death, have escaped the sword, and have been put aside by God in His own loving way as His remnant. So the fruit of the earth shall be excellent. Before, in verses 2 and 3, we were talking about how the grapevine and the fields were desolate. They were growing wild grapes instead of cultivated grapes. So they were small, bitter, and not much good. And here now we're told in the day of the branch of the Lord. In other words, the Lord is putting the growth factor back into the land. Shall be beautiful and glorious. In other words, the stuff is really giving fruit and flower, and it smells sweet, it tastes good, because God put it there. And the fruit of the earth shall be excellent and appealing. It looks good and it tastes good, and it's good for you. Okay. All right, verse 3.
You know,
okay, yeah.
it's kind of interesting. It sounds as if from the beginning, God created man and woman.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, once again, you see this Genesis thing occurring.
Mm-hmm.
To me,
the Garden of Eden.
Well, you got man, in this case, 7 women versus 1 man. And then you got all this, he's saying that he's going to give everything back fruitfulness and prosperity so they can take care of themselves. I mean, does that sound accurate?
Yeah.
Or far-fetched?
Yes. Next. That's a quick answer. But it's looking back that God has basically supplied everything in Genesis for Adam and Eve and the animals to consume. He had the trees, he had the lush grasses, he had everything there. The fruit, there was one piece of fruit that they were not supposed to eat, and that's where the serpent comes in. And here, we don't even know what kind of fruit it is, because we're not told it's an apple, but most pictures depict an apple. So,
and another thing I noticed is that it seems to me that these women were running to be wives. They wanted to be virtuous. They wanted to be seen as mothers and wives. They were willing to being obedient.
Mm-hmm.
They want to return to that type of life. Would you not say?
Again, yes. Okay. But let me just kind of throw this at you. After the Second World War, there was a lot of men that didn't come back. Mm-hmm. They were dead. They were buried on battlefields. Mm-hmm. The men that did come back, the first thing they wanted to do was find a job, find a wife, buy a house, have a family. And that's the order it's supposed to happen in. So basically, the 7-to-1 ratio here, basically the same thing is going on, but the women are saying, I need to find a husband so my name is not tarnished. Can I adopt your name as my husband so that my name is not tarnished and have a legitimacy? Then, of course, with the legitimacy, then we have the land being handed over when the landowner dies. So there's a whole legal thing going on here. That answer your question?
It does. It does.
Okay, where were we?
Oh,
3, thank you. And it shall come to pass that he who is left in Zion and remains in Jerusalem will be called holy. Everyone who is recorded amongst the living in Jerusalem. Okay. Come to pass that he who is left in Zion and remains in Jerusalem remains, which it sounds to me like some folk, some men, are having enough, and they said, I'm leaving town, catching the next train out of Jerusalem. So we have some families that it says here, and it shall come to pass, okay, that he who is left in Zion and remains, so left in Zion and remains in Zion. So there are some that are actually leaving town in Jerusalem, Jerusalem being the town. Those that will remain, those that stay, will be called holy. In other words, it looks to me like God is claiming them as part of his remnant that he's kept. Everyone who is recorded amongst the living in Jerusalem, in other words, they literally had to go and find out just who was left. You know, there was a recording of names taken, so there was a toll taken as to who was living and who was dying. So, all right. Now, verse 4. Any questions, by the way? Okay, good. Here we go. Verse 4. When the Lord has washed away the filth of the daughters of Zion and purged the blood of Jerusalem from her midst by the spirit of judgment and by the spirit of burning. Okay, spirit of burning, we are probably looking at the fact of burning offerings to God. Where am I? 4, okay. The Lord shall have washed away their filth, washed it from amongst them by cutting off those that were wicked, those that are still not returning to God. There are still a few there. And he's going to basically cut those folks off. The Lord shall have washed away their filth. That's the bit there that we're looking at, probably idol worship. I'm going to add a few notes as I go here. Washed it from among them by cutting off the wicked persons, removing those that are still not following him, still haven't quite got the idea. Washed it from within them by purging out the wicked thing. Wicked thing will be the idols. Okay, wicked thing, singular. They cannot be called so till they are made so. All right, where are we? 4. In other words, what? And by the spirit of the judgment and by the spirit of burning. The burning is returning to the temple and God's ways, plural, which would mean they would have to start sacrificing, the offerings, the official religious offerings. It would mean having to return to the temples and the ways of God. And this is what we are looking at here, is when we are saying the spirit of burning. Okay. Verse 5. And then, after people have returned to the ways of the temple, verse 5 then says, Then the Lord will create above every dwelling place on Mount Zion and above her assemblies a cloud and smoke by day and the shining of a flaming fire at night, by night. Okay. So here we have the dwelling places of Mount Zion, the houses, be it grandiose house or very modest house, and above her assemblies. Assemblies would be the temples, the places, the courts, and what have you. Locations where people gather. So God is going to supply a cloud of smoke by day and the shining of a flaming fire by night. For over all the glory there will be a covering. In other words, there will be covering. We're talking about the temple again. If you remember correctly, Moses and the Exodus, same thing. The fire, the smoke, the fire by night, the smoke by day, guiding the faithful. Even then, they had a problem with idol worship. That's another Sunday. It's another Bible study. All right, so that's that. The thing is that their houses will be protected. There will be a house with his own protection, where they worship in God alone and with their families, or the temple, wherever they are, wherever the assemblies are, they will be sheltered and protected. Verse 6, and there will be a tabernacle for shade in the daytime from the heat, for a place of refuge, and for a shelter from the storm and rain. Okay, and those is itching for some reason today. Here we go. There is a difference. The weather in Jerusalem will change. It'll be beastly hot during the summer and quite cold or chilly in the winter to the point of actually having frost. And the storms that the area in Jerusalem had to put up with are very quick, very sudden, absolutely sudden, dramatic downpouring, and then it will stop. And then the sun will come back, and then you have the humidity. Now, the weird thing about Jerusalem is the location and the proximity of the Dead Sea. And the Dead Sea is 400 feet, I believe, below sea level, and Jerusalem is not. I don't know, but Jerusalem is way above sea level. So what happens is, although the two locations are quite prevalent, quite close together, Jerusalem may be having frosty mornings, and the Dead Sea will be sweltering at 88 degrees. Because there is this difference in sea level, the mountains around the Dead Sea act like a protection. But it also is a way for the heat to be bounced off the mountains and off the hillsides, down into the sea, down into the water. The water reflects. So you've got a lot of crisscross of temperatures, rain, and so on. And what happens? You end up with a radical temperature difference. So, a place of refuge in the time of the heat, and a shelter from the storm and the rain. I know we have strange periods now of rain and snow, and then suddenly 50 degrees the next day. But this is a little bit more dramatic. I mean, they are able to grow melons, or 3-4 crops a year. They water it with water that is not from the Dead Sea, because the high salt content. So, so that is that. There will be a tabernacle. Tabernacle can be as much as a large tent for shade in the daytime from the heat, for a place of refuge, and for a shelter from storm and rain. So it acts as two things, but God has supplied it for them for their shelter from both the heat, the sun, the rain, the wind, and the storms. So God has supplied everything. If all they had to do was return to God. Do we have any questions?
So, hearing the plight of the men and the women, how do we gain this protection that they've gained? God, after all suffering they've endured, how do we gain God's protection?
I can answer that by asking another question. Do you believe there is but one God?
Yes.
Okay. Do you believe that God loves you?
Yes.
Do you love God?
Yes.
Do you believe that God can supply all your needs?
Yes. And He has.
And He has. There are some of us now that are looking at different forms of beliefs. They're moving away from being Christians to what I would call quasi-Christians. It sounds like a good idea at the time, but believe me, it will backfire on you. Stay true to your Bible. Get into your Bible. You know, a lot of times I hear people in church, they'll say, "Oh, I need prayer." I say, "Okay. And what do you need prayer about?" And they'll say it. You say, "Okay, do you want to lead the prayer? Do you want me to?" "Well, Pastor, go ahead." So my form of prayer is to the point where God meets me at my level. He wants to bring me up to Him. I don't need to bring Him down to me. God is the highest. I am His creation. He is my creator. So with that in mind, your prayer needs to be, one, very sincere. Two, it has to be coming from so you have to ask forgiveness. And three, it has to be sustained. What is it you're asking God to do? But don't ever forget, just because you ask, you're going to get it. There's a story that says, there's a man that met God, and he asked God, he said, "God, is it true that a year is like but a moment, but a moment is also like one of your moments is like a year in our lifetimes?" God said yes. And he said, "Do you have any other questions?" And the young man said, "Yes. God, can I have $1 million?" And God says, "Yeah, okay. Give me 20 minutes." We seem to want immediate gratification. That may not be in God's terms. In Isaiah, we see how people strayed away from God. And God pleads with them, "Please come back to me. You are my people. I am your God." They blend off into the environment. They find other things. They build idols out of clay, stick rocks in there where the ear should be, and start bowing down to it, basically because they believe in what they see, not what they hear. The whole book of Isaiah here is basically somebody that's trying to tell them that they're going off track, off rail. But nobody wants to hear that and say, "I am wrong, I need to correct." But those that do correct and those that do put God back where He should be are the ones that hear from God in all sincerity and love and concern. We have to love God because God wants to love us back. But God wants to love us, but we need to love Him back. 2 Corinthians 3. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
I went off there on a rabbit trail.
Thank you very, very much.
Well, I'm glad we got this little session done. As I said, this was Isaiah 4. If you need to get in contact with me, again, my email address is pastornige@gmail.com. This is a rather off-the-cuff way of showing you where we're at and what we're doing in the Bible study. We're on Isaiah, but we can be convinced to go elsewhere. Isaiah is a very long book. I know there are other people that would like to study something else other than Isaiah, and that is fine. I can at least take a day and say, okay, we're going to study something else real quick by request. I'm open to that, okay? I need to know what you want to study, and if you have any questions, so that I can answer them. Again, if you'd like to get a hold of me, pastornige@gmail.com. All right, you have a blessed day. Hope this was a help to you.
Thank you very much.
And I thank the people that were here. Most of them you didn't even hear from. They just sat there and looked at me like I was crazy. But I thank those that did ask questions, because it does help. You may be asking the question, because others are not quite up to asking, and that's fine. All right. Again, thank you very much for putting up with this little podcast, and God loves you. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.